Good evening and welcome to another live and unpredictable Q&A, the program where you get to ask the questions. Well, tonight I'm joined by Australia's Defence Minister Joel Fitzgibbon, academic and musician Kate Crawford, the former Minister for the Arts and Sports, now Shadow Attorney General George Brandis, founding member of the Chaser and could have been intern to Hillary Clinton, Charles Firth, and the journalist turned sex discrimination commissioner turned New South Wales State Liberal MP Pru Goward. Please welcome our panel. OK, well, before tonight's program, our audience put forward the questions they'd like to ask the panel, and we've chosen those we think are the best. But the members of the panel haven't seen any of those questions. They'll be answering them all off the cuff. Just to remind you, Q&A is live between 9:30 and 10:30 p.m. Eastern Australian time, so you can also send your name, address and questions via the web at abc.net.au/Q&A or by SMS to the number on your screen, 197 55 222, 197 55 222. And let's go now to our very first question in the audience. It's from Romy Zavala-Kano.
I'm just wanting to pose the question, why is it, despite the fact that her husband is obviously a high-standing political figure, that Miss Neal seems to be copying all the flack in the media at the moment? Do you think that gender has played a part in the reaction that she's been shown? OK, well, just to explain the context to anyone who doesn't know the story well, Belinda Neal is the federal Labor MP whom Kevin Rudd has ordered to undergo anger management counselling after a series of headline stories about her temper. As it happens, her husband is the New South Wales Education Minister, and this all began after a big night out that both of them had at a restaurant rather brilliantly named Iguana Joe's. Well, I'd like to throw that first of all to Kate Crawford. Sexism or not?
Lucky me. Well, look, this is one of those quite nasty stories, I have to say. It's certainly a case of bad behaviour, whichever way you slice it. But when it comes to whether or not there's actually a gender bias here, I'm not entirely sure there is. I think Kevin Rudd has played this quite well by suggesting very quickly that Belinda take herself off to anger management therapy. And I think in some ways what we can really learn from this is hopefully in the New South Wales government we'll actually see Yemma step up and do the same for Della Bosca. But if that doesn't happen at the very least, I hope the Liberals will realise that possibly once, amongst their ranks, Troy Buswell could think about going to see a therapist, if indeed they do have therapists for chair sniffing. But I'd like to think that we'd see a few more of our politicians who tend to get a bit tense to go and seek some counselling. I think it's very healthy.
Charles Firth, you're no stranger to anger management classes.
Yeah.
I can say that, can't I?
Yeah, no, I think... I tend to agree with you. I think Belinda Neal has been treated very unfairly in this. I actually agree with the version of events that one of her mates put out very early on in this piece. She wrote a statutory declaration saying that Belinda Neal never lies. And I think subsequently we've found that statutory declaration is entirely true. She never swears. She's a person of great sort of moral reputability. I mean, I think actually the thing that's going on here is that Kevin Rudd has the numbers to be able to wrap Belinda Neal over the knuckles. Morris Yemma is a wimp who needs Della's supporting caucus and can't do anything about it. It's mates versus, Belinda Neal. She's a little woman backbencher, might as well, I mean, no, I'm not saying...
Shall I give you a saying that... Shall I give you a shovel?
That's the attitude. That's the... Look, Pru, you'll back me up. You're a feminist.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, sort of.
No, that's right. And I'd say that I think the whole idea of, this all being about her... oh, gosh. I'm absolutely lost for words. It's nothing to do with her bad behaviour. I mean, that is just a red herring. She has... Well, no, this issue fundamentally is about whether or not she corrupted the laws of the land by threatening people with their jobs and threatening their licences. It's a very serious issue.
Oh, come on.
OK, Pru, you've put your political hat on. Put your sexual discrimination commissioner hat on and address the point made by Labor MP Julia Irwin this morning in defence of Belinda Neal. She says the women of the parliament are always being singled out by the media for these kind of stories. Do you deny that?
Oh, absolutely, because I think all people in Parliament are singled out. It doesn't pay anybody to behave badly. in federal or state politics, and I don't think she's been singled out at all. But I think to keep trivialising it as a bad behaviour issue when we're actually talking about a corruption issue, I think is quite a serious thing.
And where's the corruption?
Well, the possibility of there being corruption, and that's what we should be investigating, not whether or not Mr Rudd is ideally placed to be a councillor. I mean, anger management, please. I mean, that is really not a hanging offence. There'd be nobody in this room who probably couldn't do with a bit of that. So it's not about his personal advice to her. It's whether or not she has abused her position as a Member of Parliament, particularly with a marriage to somebody who, by inference, she can draw into that as a State Minister. And I don't think that's a political statement. This is an ethical question.
Joel Fitzgibbon, you're obviously the same party, the same parliament, and by the way, Julia Irwin also pointed out that your old mate Mark Latham broke a cab driver's arm and there was no party action against him at all, certainly no anger management classes. Is this one rule for men, another for women?
He always gets a mention, Tony, doesn't he? I was pretty confident I might be left out of this part of the conversation. Look, on the issue of sexism, I think another politician is basically the wrong person to ask. I mean, we all develop a pretty healthy cynicism towards the media. Obviously, something went wrong that night, but I think it's been largely beat up by the media and it's grown a life.
It was a piss-up at a pub that got out of hand and... You know, it's been blown out of all proportion. It's nothing to do with
kids got their
the
jobs.
law.
No, that's not true, Charles. Kids got... I mean, you and Work Choices, remember that. Kids got their jobs threatened.
Well, yeah, it was an incredibly embarrassing event where the power obviously rushed her head. She's just been elected a backbencher.
The power, there we are. There we are.
Yeah,
it's finally got
the power has rushed her head.
Let's hear from George Brandis. We haven't heard from him yet.
Well, I'm with Pru. I mean, it is about bad behaviour, but there's a deeper issue, and the deeper issue is abuse of power. I mean, this is...
Why have I been put between two Prus?
Just listen.
I've got a Pru on one hand and a Pru on the other.
Just listen for a moment. Belinda Neal is a powerful person in her own right.
I come over that side.
She's an influential member of Parliament. She's married to a state Labor minister, and when a scene turns ugly, what is her reaction? Her reaction is to say, I have the power to deprive you of your licence. I have the power, because of who I am, because of the political networks to which I belong, to make sure you get sacked. Now, that's not just about bad behaviour. That is about abuse of power.
George, have you ever been to the Central Coast? Yes. If she wants to be lady of the Central Coast, she can be it. They can have the Central Coast.
George,
Lord and lady of the Central Coast.
Hold on, everybody.
You've got to understand.
Hold on, everybody, George. Just wait a minute. Joel Fitzgibbon, I want to hear if there's a defence to what's being said over this side of the table.
Well, first of all, Tony, George should know by now that when the government of the day has got itself in a big enough pickle, it doesn't really need the assistance of the opposition, and just trying to, point score on the issues, not helping to answer the very question that was asked, and that was whether Belinda Neal has copped a harder time because she's a woman. And I like to think that the answer to that is no. Yeah. But when you run for Parliament, you put yourself to before the court of the people, and unfortunately there are no real rules of evidence or any procedural fairness involved. We all put ourselves up for that, and we've got to expect tougher scrutiny than members of the general public.
And it means
I don't know what happened.
The people who serve you dinner, I think, it would be particularly nice.
But look, I don't know what happened that night, Tony. None of us do. And we'll see how it washes out over the course of the next few days.
Joel. You've got a pretty fair idea. 6 spontaneous statutory declarations from the staff, and they were sufficiently persuasive to persuade the Prime Minister to interrupt his trip to Japan, to ring her up to counsel her. They were persuasive enough to get the Deputy Prime Minister to openly condemn her in the media this morning. And you can't airbrush this away by saying, well, it doesn't really matter. What matters is, as I was trying to point out before, is the character of the threat. The character to use the power that this person has, that others in the community don't have, that the victims of the threat didn't have, in order to subject them